Colleagues, friends, welcome to the 2018 Society of University Surgeons Presidential Address. My name is Alan Sung, and it is an extreme honor to be able to introduce an amazing physician in person, Dr. Taylor Riall, as our SUS president. Of course, this is the Taylor we all know, unparalleled surgeon, scholar, educator, and also an intense athlete. I don't know about you, I wouldn't want to be facing her as an opponent. She's almost like the intense Mona Lisa. If you look at that, she's always looking at you no matter where you sit. Just an example of her intensity and just always getting things done. In October of last year, I get an email from Taylor. Alan, you are introducing me at the upcoming ASC meeting. Here's my CV. Here are some names of people you can contact. So she gave me 3 people. Her mom, Charlie, her husband, and then Dr. Townsend, her mentor. And then she said, here's a Dropbox of the photos you can use. Either she was trying to be helpful or thought I was just totally incompetent. Hopefully not the latter. But I started thinking, are there some secrets that she's trying to hide from me? So I had to go digging. I had to actually find some of her other family members, as well as friends that she grew up with, faculty, colleagues that she encountered throughout her career so far. One of the first questions I asked all of them is, what are the top 3 things that Taylor would bring to a deserted island? I was really surprised. Everyone, the top choice was Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke. And number 2, they would say, well, she would bring her bike. Hopefully it's a stationary bike if it's on a desert island, but I'm sure Taylor would make it work somehow. And also, everyone said her running shoes. If we had a 4th, don't worry, Charlie, it would have been you. But I think most people thought that you couldn't bring a person, but I'm sure Taylor would have thought of you first. Okay. So what are some other surprising facts we don't know about Taylor? Does she cook or bake? Not at all. So there's a story. She was in Houston in her house. The only reason why she knew that her stove wasn't working was that the clock went out. So she went out, bought a new stove so she could replace the clock. True story. Another interesting fact, she met her husband at dance class in residency, and she is actually an accomplished ballroom dancer. Hopefully we can see some of that on Wednesday reception. Now this was interesting. Taylor had an obsession with Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in college. So according to some people, during her dorm room, on her side of the room, she had posters of Batman, she had Batman bedding, she had a black towel where her mom sewed on that yellow Batman insignia. I wonder what her roommate thought. Anyway, she also had an obsession with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She used to always drive to New York City to see them perform live. This is in college. Taylor also loves games, especially games where you could accumulate points to compete against other people. One of the games that she loves is Words with Friends. I've never played it, but I had to look it up. It's sort of like Scrabble. If you want to play Taylor, her username is actually Darth Riall. No joke. And this is funny. She hates it when someone sends her a text and concludes a funny or sarcastic message with "ha ha." To her, it's demeaning. She thinks that the sender doesn't think she's smart enough to understand the humor behind it. So of course, these facts may or may not be surprising, and I hope Taylor doesn't seek revenge on some of the people that gave me this. But what do we know about Taylor, and how did she get to the place that she is? So let's begin. So by the nature of her obsession, her passion, it's a triathlon, we're going to start. So every triathlon starts with a swim, and Taylor definitely made a splash as a childhood. She was the firstborn, and according to her sister, she's always been her mom's favorite. And Taylor is always able to strike a pose. Very early on, Taylor was interested in medicine. I think her first specialty was colorectal surgery. Here, I think she's trying to do a colonoscopy, but luckily, I think she chose on the pancreas. Taylor also made a splash, but a very small splash. She was a platform diver. I don't think I could even jump off of that high platform. And Taylor always made a splash with an amazing smile, that charming personality. She'd always come down with a great presence. So the next leg of a triathlon is the bike. And Taylor has always been pedal to the metal in everything that she does. This is exemplified by the words that I asked her friends and colleagues. What are the words that best describe Taylor? Pretty much overwhelmingly, driven, motivated, passionate, determined. These are all qualities you can see in how she lives her life. And even in her activities and adventures, Taylor has pretty much done everything. You name it, she's tried it. From skydiving to ziplining, parasailing, surfing, flying an airplane. These are all things adventures she's never scared to try out. Taylor's also pedal to the metal, passionate about her family, from her parents to her sister to her niece and nephew. They are a very close-knit family. And of course, we have here her husband, Charlie, her best friend, love of her life, and partner in crime. The final stage of any triathlon is a run. It's about going the distance. And Taylor has always gone the distance in everything that she's done. She is a finisher. Taylor was a Jersey girl, grew up in New Jersey. She went to Rutgers University. She actually graduated college in 3 years with a chemistry highest honors. She won multiple awards, Douglas Scholar, New Jersey Distinguished Scholars, as well as multiple chemistry awards. From New Jersey, she spent a lot of time at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, where she completed her medical school, surgical residency, and fellowship. There, she was an outstanding clinician, researcher, and a fellow colleague to many. She was recognized for many of her research accomplishments, the Upjohn Award for Clinical Research, Foundation Research Grant. She also got HPBA Research Award and the McGehee-Harvey Research Award, Young Investigators Day. And you can see here in her class photo, many of her colleagues are in this room. Her first faculty position was at University of Texas Medical Branch under Dr. Townsend. There she got a PhD in clinical science. She also got the Seeley Center Graduate Student Award, as well as recognized for her accomplishments in research. She got the John Seeley Distinguished Chair in Clinical Research. She was the Associate Director for Clinical Sciences Graduate Program. She also became the Director of the Center for Comparative Effectiveness and Outcomes. And she rose up the ranks very, very quickly to become professor in the Department of Surgery there. But Taylor has recently moved to the University of Arizona College of Medicine, where she's the chief, Division of General Surgery and Surgical Oncology. She's the vice chair of Quality and Performance, and she's currently the acting chair in the Department of Surgery. You know, a lot of people say that a triathlon does not build character. It actually reveals character. Taylor, you are strong, you are resilient. Most of all, you inspire, and you set a high bar for everybody around you. You have colored your life with determination and compassion. And I can say I'm very honored and privileged to have served with you at the University of Surgeons. So please join me in welcoming our SUS President, Dr. Taylor Riall.
Thank you, Alan. That was really touching, and it's not very often that I get the opportunity to see myself through somebody else's eyes. So you now all have had the opportunity to hear the Facebook version of my life, but today you're going to get to meet the real Taylor. While I look good on paper, I didn't always enjoy the journey. My words today come from my own personal experience with burnout, an experience that only 4 years ago left me ready to walk away from surgery, medicine, and my life as I knew it. And I'm here today to tell you that a successful career in academic surgery and happiness are not mutually exclusive. As academic surgeons, we face many challenges. The demands on physicians at academic healthcare institutions are expanding rapidly. And they include increased regulation, increased pressure on clinical productivity, difficulty getting funding, more patients to care for with fewer resources, inefficient systems, the electronic medical record, and we just switched from Epic to Cerner, so don't get me started on the electronic medical record. We have rising student debt, and we have just plain difficulty balancing our personal and professional lives. These challenges are not going to end, nor are they going to slow down, and they put pressure on the entire human system within healthcare. And this is the traditional model in surgery. This is the paradigm that encourages success by running faster and faster on the hamster wheel until exhaustion sets in, with major collateral damage and eventual burnout. I was raised in a traditional era, in the most traditional of programs, where we were taught to be strong. You've all heard this, but we were taught the only bad thing about being on call every other night is that you miss half the good cases. We didn't believe in burnout, and if we were experiencing it, we may or may not have recognized it, but we certainly didn't talk about it. And to this day, I truly believe that at that time, my mentors and role models were propagating the best culture of professionalism that they knew, a deeply entrenched collections of beliefs that really allowed them and their predecessors to override their fatigue, their poor health, their self-doubt, and in many cases their nominal personal lives, to fulfill their roles as life-saving surgeons. This culture of strength and invincibility, while heroic and romanticized, has always been fundamentally flawed. It's flawed in its supposition that surgeons are somehow superhuman, without the fundamental personal need for self-care and for a life outside of medicine. And it's even more flawed in the assertion that a surgeon who allows him or herself to be fully human and vulnerable is unworthy of our trust and respect. Not surprisingly, this superhuman attitude has really led to significant consequences, and it's come to light recently, and the data, the statistics are staggering. Burnout represents a real threat to the surgical workforce. Look around this room. Statistics say that half the surgeons in this room are experiencing symptoms of burnout. We have a lot of residents here today. In a recent study by Elmore and colleagues, 69% of surgical residents met criteria for burnout on one or more subscales of the Maslach burnout inventory. And 44% of you considered leaving residency after investing all this time, money, and energy. And even more concerning, a third of first-year residents have symptoms of burnout before they even start their internships. Every year in the United States, we lose nearly 300 physicians to suicide. This is more than 2 medical school classes. And this is too much. If we don't change surgical culture and improve surgeon well-being, we're going to continue to lose our best surgeons to burnout, We're going to no longer attract the best and brightest medical students to careers in surgery. This is the formal definition of burnout, but I'm going to tell you what my experience of burnout was like. So 4 years ago, from the outside looking in, you would have thought I had it all. I looked good on paper, but I felt like I was bad at everything I did. I felt like I was a bad surgeon, a bad investigator, a bad mentor, a bad teacher, a bad wife, a bad triathlete, whatever, because I didn't have time to do any of those things well. I couldn't remember what I liked to do, and I was angry every time my phone rang, before I even knew what somebody wanted. And I remember during this time, I was on call. I had a particularly bad trauma call, and it's like 3 in the morning, and I just laid down to go to sleep, and my pager went off not 5 minutes later with a stat trauma. And I literally had to will myself to get out of bed and go down and see that patient. And I remember walking down the emergency room, and I still remember what that patient looked like. It was a 33-year-old woman who was in a motor vehicle accident, and she came in dead on arrival. And I remember my first reaction. I thought, good, because I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to sit in the CAT scanner, I don't have to follow up x-rays, I could just go back to sleep. And while many people in this room may not admit that, I might be the only one, I venture to guess that others have had similar thoughts along the way. And I felt trapped. I felt like I had no other marketable skills. I was a slave to the lifestyle that a career in medicine provided. And most of all, I had this extraordinary sense of failure, this sense of weakness, this sense of disappointing or selling out and disappointing the mentors who have provided me so many opportunities. And I realized I needed to do something different. I met Robert in July of 2014. Robert is a sports psychologist in Houston who helps high potential athletes function at their very best through mindfulness and self-awareness. I like to tell people that Robert coaches their mental game. He takes winners and he turns them into champions. I met Robert by random chance. I Googled sports psychology in Houston, and I still remember the first time I went to see Robert. To this day, I'm not sure why he didn't say, "Thank you very much for coming, but here's somebody else who can help you." But he didn't. And Robert really profoundly changed the way that I think. And Robert taught me that I could actually create the life I wanted instead of the life that I had. And he taught me several things. He taught me that, well, I can't control many things in my environment. I get to control how I respond to it. He taught me that in every moment, I have a choice. I get to choose what I think, how I communicate, how I show up, and the results that I generate. And Robert taught me that investing in my own well-being is an investment in my patients, my colleagues, my organization, my family, and my friends. And as I went through this process, I realized that I was the only one who could change my life. At that point, I really decided that, God, I really want to do what Robert does. I want to help people like me. And I decided to enroll in a professional coaching course. And honestly, my initial thought was to leave medicine and to coach surgeons and physicians who were burned out. And so I enrolled in the executive coaching course. The course cost about $10,000, but the personal growth and development that come with it were free and invaluable. And as I went through that process, I realized that I didn't want to leave surgery. I realized that I had a unique opportunity. I had a unique opportunity to use my recent experience, my surgical skills, and my leadership positions in academic surgery to change the way that we train surgeons and develop faculty. I interviewed at the University of Arizona in February of 2015. And frankly, at that time, I had no intention of staying in medicine or surgery. A few months later, I took the position as division chief, and I was really apprehensive. I was really worried that I was going to get sucked back into that dark place. And even more than that, I was really protective of these ideas, and I was worried about sharing them, because I was worried that the people whose opinions I valued the most would dismiss me out of hand. Because I'm acutely aware that 4 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes if somebody said mindfulness or burnout or well-being. And I came to Arizona, and I had this unique opportunity to do this natural experiment. I came there with this new attitude and new perspective, and I got to just be that without any preconceived idea of who I was. And Charlie said I got to come as Taylor 2.0. He says this version's easier to use, and it has fewer bugs. But anyway, this has really been a remarkable experiment, and I just want to share some of the lessons that I'm learning along the way. So first and foremost, it's essential that we take care of ourselves. Physician well-being is essential to providing high-quality patient care, and it's essential to the success of our healthcare system. If we give and give and give and don't take care of ourselves, we get that compassion fatigue that I described earlier. And physician well-being is not just the absence of burnout. There's so much more. We're really good at teaching surgeons to operate, and we're really good at teaching them to take care of patients. But we must model, develop, and teach the attitudes, behaviors, and strategies that are essential to well-being. These include self-awareness, mindfulness, motivation, emotional intelligence, drive, resilience. And furthermore, we must simultaneously create an intentional culture that supports these behaviors while providing multiple paths to success in academic surgery. Unfortunately, surgical culture doesn't create an environment that encourages us to take care of ourselves. I remember being a resident and walking around saying things like pain is weakness leaving the body, and calling other people weak if they called in sick or wanted to spend time with their families. In January of 2014, I developed neurologic symptoms from an L3, L4 stenosis, and I required urgent back surgery. 3 days after that operation, I flew to San Diego for this very meeting. I was in so much pain, I literally couldn't even put on my shoes. And there's so many things wrong with that story, but in my mind, the thing that's most wrong with that story is that my colleagues view that as strong. My colleagues applaud that behavior. But does that represent strength? In a more recent example, in 2016, I was asked to give a faculty retreat seminar on physician well-being. And so I travel there the night before, and I go out to dinner. The next morning, I go and I give traditional surgical grand rounds on gallbladder disease. And I had the opportunity to meet with several of the faculty throughout the course of the day. At 5 o'clock, I was walking from the hospital to where this seminar was going to be, and while I was walking in the hall, I slipped in my high heel. And I heard an audible crack, and I had immediate pain, and I was embarrassed, so I stood up, and the surgeon that I was with said, "Well, can you still walk?" And I sort of, embarrassed and in true surgeon fashion, I said, "Well, I guess so," and I walked 3/4 of a mile in my high heel. And by the time I got to where the meeting was, my foot was swollen out of the shoe. And I said to the chair, I'm like, I think I broke my foot. And so unsure what to do, he said, "Well, can you still give the talk?" And so I thought, I'm like, well, I don't have any other shoes, so as long as I can do it in my bare feet. And I took off my shoes, and I gave this 2.5 hour seminar in my bare feet. And at the end, I'm in tremendous pain. But during the talk, the staff was kind enough to go out to the Walgreens, and they bought me crutches and flip-flops. And I said, "Look, I need to see a doctor." And the orthopedic surgeon came over. He sort of glanced at my foot. He declared it not broken. And he said, even if it was broken, they're not going to do anything anyway because it's an open fracture. It's not an open fracture. So they dropped me back at my hotel with my crutches and flip-flops, and somehow I made it home the next day, and I had a broken 5th metatarsal and a cuboid. I remember calling Charlie that night, and it was ironic because Charlie's first response was, "Well, it's a good thing it happened in a hospital." So there's a couple things that strike me about this story. The first is that, if a family member or a patient fell in our hospital, we wouldn't treat them this way. And the second is that I've been so indoctrinated into surgical culture, I was so afraid of appearing weak that I didn't advocate for myself. It's essential that we take care of ourselves. I've thought a lot about burnout, obviously, and I think in order to burn out, you had to have been on fire. And burnout really represents the extreme end of the spectrum. And I would argue that if we're struggling, conflicted, or feeling powerless in any aspect of our lives, it really holds us back from achieving our greatest potential in all areas. So I'm going to ask the people in this room, when was the last time you were on fire? When was the last time you were excited to get up every morning and loved what you did at work? For some of you, that may be right now. But for others, you might not even remember the last time. So many of us, our self-worth and our identity is wrapped up in being a surgeon, but there's so many more things that make me Taylor. And I think in order to maintain that fire, we have to respect the whole person. We have to feed all these parts of ourselves. Because as we progress through our careers change and our lives change and our priorities shift. And if we don't change with those priorities, we can't do any of those things well, and we can't maintain that fire. In his book, Total Leadership, Stuart Friedman talks about these 4 different domains of our lives. When you think about these domains, how important are each of these domains to you right now? And how much time are you spending in all of those areas? And how well are those areas aligned? When I did this exercise about 4 years ago, this is sort of what my life looked like. So I already told you I worked all the time. And I was actually pretty unhappy with what I was doing when I was working. I had forgotten what I liked to do, and what I was doing was triathlon, and that just kind of sucked up my time and kept me away from my home and my community and different things. When I worked a lot at home, I didn't spend a lot of time with Charlie, and I had totally lost my friends and my sense of community. This is my rebalance circles 2 years later. So I came to the University of Arizona, and I still worked a lot, right? But now I was kind of excited about what I was doing, and I actually added a circle. How does that work? So I added my coaching business, but I actually brought a lot of the ideas from my coaching to how I interact with my faculty and in developing a well-being program for my residents, so there's significant overlap. I spent more time with Charlie. He helped me set up and grow my coaching business. And I remembered all these things I like to do. I love to be outside. I love to ride and swim and be in the sun. I love to see the beautiful scenery by my house and see all the beautiful animals that live right in my yard. And I get to do it with this whole new community of friends that I've met in Tucson, both inside and outside the hospital. So all my circles are bigger. My life is so much more full, but they're aligned. And I want to be really clear. This did not happen overnight. This was a 2-year process. This is an ongoing process. This is a series of small, sustainable changes that every day brought my circles a little closer to how I wanted them to look. And you wake up 2 years later and your whole life is different. And I'll also warn you that in an instant, these circles can be disrupted. In January of 2017, Dr. Neumeier asked me to step in as the acting chair of the department. And overnight, my circles are out of whack. And I have to ask myself, I agreed to do this job, so what are my priorities right now? And if they're not feeling good, how do I change that to get back in balance? 4 months later, I needed surgery. Again, my circles are totally disrupted. But you know what? That's okay. These circles change all the time. And my point is, you need to be aware not only of those acute shifts in your circles, but in those subtle shifts that happen over time. And you need to constantly realign what you're doing with your priorities. I think as surgeons, our path is so defined for us along the way that it's really kind of easy to lose sight of what's important while we're focused on the finish line. Well-being is defined as the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy, but in reality, none of us is comfortable, healthy, or happy all the time. And I've come to realize that it's our ability to respond to the challenges that arise in our lives that are at the core of our well-being. One of the most profound books I ever read was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl writes this book from the unique perspective of both a neuroscientist and a Holocaust survivor. And what Viktor Frankl says is the only thing that cannot be taken away from us is our ability to choose how we respond to our circumstances. What's really remarkable to me is that in the last 4 years, nothing in my external environment changed. And in fact, my current job is infinitely more stressful than my old job. But the only thing that changed is my ability to respond to my life in a way that promotes my well-being. When I think about it, in every moment I have a choice. They may not be easy choices, and I may not have a lot of time to make them, but I have a choice. And Robert was right. I get to choose what I think, how I communicate, and how I show up. And when I do that, it changes the results that I generate. One of the key things that helps me choose how I respond instead of responding reflexively is what I call managing my stories, or sort of understanding what's going on in my head. Eleanor Roosevelt said that nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. We think that an event or interaction leads to our emotional response and leads to or justifies our actions, but there's actually an intermediate step. So between any event or interaction, we tell a story. We interpret what the person said, we add meaning, and it's that story that we tell, that meaning that we add, that creates our feeling or emotion and leads to our behavior. And so I'll tell you a silly, but actually real story. So when I first moved to Tucson, I was running on the bike path. I was running all the way to the right, and I was minding my own business, and this cyclist comes barreling down behind me, and he says, "On your left." I was immediately pissed off, and I thought, what is this guy's problem? I'm all the way to the right. In the moment, I was like, wow, why am I angry about this? And if I'm honest, when I'm riding my bike, the runners are kind of in my way, and I'm usually yelling at them. So I thought, what might be another logical explanation for this guy's behavior? Maybe, I'm wearing my headphones and he's just passing me and he wants me to be aware so I don't move over and hit him, and instead of being angry, I could be grateful. And in that moment, I was able to just say to the guy, "Oh, good morning." He said, "Good morning, it's a beautiful day, have a nice ride." And I'm telling you, 3 years ago, I would have looked at this guy and I said, "What's your problem?" And he would have looked at me and said, "What's your problem?" And I would have had an argument with this person I don't even know. And you're laughing, but it's true. And more importantly, I talk to the residents about this all the time because it's really important that we change those underlying thoughts. I hear residents come up to me all the time and they say the ED, the medical service, the anesthesiologist are trying to kill my patients. I said, "Do you really believe that?" But the thing is, we go in with that attitude and it changes how we approach that situation. So I like to come to work every day and I like to assume that everyone is there to take the best care of patients, and it changes the way that I approach those situations. So it's really important that you understand the stories that you're making up, even when you don't realize it, and it helps you change the way that you show up in different situations. The next thing I learned is that I have to have the courage to define my own success. And this is something that has been really hard for me. In academic surgery, there's a really narrow definition of success, right? It's the traditional triple threat. It's the funded surgeon scientist who's a busy clinician and an outstanding teacher. And if our definition of success falls outside this, we often find it difficult to see a path to success in academic surgery and to happiness. And we often don't feel valued for what we might contribute. I think in order to define your success, you have to be really clear on your values, your goals, and your vision. 4 years ago, I could spend all day telling you what I didn't want, but I actually couldn't tell you what I wanted. And if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to get there. As Yogi Berra said, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. The point is, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You may succeed, but it'll sort of be random. I think for me, being really clear on my values, goals, and visions helps me make decisions. We're asked to do things all the time. We're taught never to say no. And when I'm really clear on my values, goals, and visions, I can say, is this aligned with that? And if it's not, I don't do it. One of the things I tell people all the time is I do all these things because I feel like I should or I have to. And if I can't change that to I want to or I prefer to, then I shouldn't do it. Once you're clear on your values, goals, and visions, you have to really be aware of the fear that keeps you playing small. And when I say playing small, I mean really not not reaching for those things, not trying new things, not stepping outside that comfort zone. And I think for me, the fear falls in 3 categories. The first is fear of rejection. What will other people think? I have to tell you that at times it's been really hard for me to come to surgical meetings like this. I used to tell Charlie, I'm like, it's like this whole world of people who are afraid of coming in last. And when you come here, you hear the Facebook version of everyone's lives. You hear about their grants, their papers, their new leadership positions, the number of Whipples they did last year. And it's really easy to feel inadequate, right? It's really easy to feel like my career, my accomplishments, my achievements don't measure up. And certainly if my definition of success is outside that traditional model, that's even worse. What would Dr. Cameron think if I told him I wanted to dedicate my career to surgeon well-being and creating a different surgical culture? He didn't even want me to do outcomes research. Fear of failure is linked to fear of rejection. What if I fail, and what will other people think if I fail? And fear of success takes that one step further. It's like, I can't be happy because I'm standing there waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the truth is that, anticipating disaster doesn't protect us from it. It really just takes away those moments of joy that we could be experiencing right now. So I think about this all the time. This is my comfort zone. This is traditional surgery. This is what I'm good at right now, and it's fear that keeps us here in this comfort zone. And in order to grow, we have to move to this stretch zone. This is where courage meets fear. This is where we step outside and say, yeah, I might be afraid to fail, but I got to try this. And it's in this zone where we grow, when we become our true selves. And I think, when I step into that stretch zone, and I've stepped into it a lot in the last 4 years, I feel that pull back to the safety of my comfort zone. And when I feel that now, it's good. I just recognize it, and I say, that's just fear. And I'm able to move forward anyway. And when I do, I'm often presented with opportunities I wouldn't have otherwise been able to see. I've talked a lot about personal resilience, but I want to talk a little bit further than that. Personal resilience is certainly important, but Brian Bowman and the group from Stanford talk about the 3 reciprocal domains of physician well-being. This includes personal resilience, but also a culture of wellness and efficiency of practice. As leaders in surgery, we must model and teach these attitudes and behaviors that facilitate success. But in addition, we have a responsibility for faculty and resident well-being, similar to our commitment to ensure clinical competence. We must simultaneously create this culture of well-being that supports these behaviors and provide multiple paths to success in academic surgery. My goal in Arizona is to create an intentional culture that supports the well-being of my residents, faculty, and staff. In my opinion, if I get the culture right, the rest is easy. Work RVUs, compliance, quality, patient experience. If I have engaged, healthy surgeons with discretional energy, they can do all of those things. And I try to build this every day. It's not just enough for me to talk about this. I actually have to walk the talk. I have to take care of myself. I have to have a broader definition of success. And when my faculty come and tell me they can't make a 6:30 a.m. meeting because they have other priorities, I have to accommodate that. And I strive to create an environment that allows them to take care of themselves, to define their own success, and to feel valued for their unique contribution to my department. In July of 2016, we implemented a residency well-being program at our hospital. The program is based on a model called energy leadership, and this model teaches residents, it helps them increase their self-awareness and their emotional intelligence. It teaches them to do all the things that I'm talking about. It teaches them to make conscious choices. It teaches them to respond instead of react to their environment. And it teaches them to consciously integrate their work and life in a way that works for them. In addition, this model provides a common language for us to communicate. And it helps to really operationalize abstracts that I think can be quite abstract. Once we lay the foundation for that program, we have monthly experiential and interactive sessions, and I do most of these sessions with the residents. And they include things like team building and communication and exercises to consciously integrate their work in their life and to incorporate strategic diet and exercise into our busy days. As part of that, the residents take an assessment called the Energy Leadership Index, and it measures a value called the Average Resonating Level, or ARL. It doesn't matter exactly what it is, but if residents have a higher average resonating level, it's basically, it means they have more emotional intelligence. And what's really interesting to me is that their average resonating level correlated with burnout, perceived stress, and depression. As their ARL increased, their exhaustion decreased, their cynicism decreased, their professional efficacy increased, and their perceived stress and depression decreased. What's really neat about this is I know from my coaching that I can actually impact their average resonating level, and if I can change that, I can actually impact the outcomes that I'm interested in. The first year of the program, I was still kind of learning how to do it, but in the first year of the program, we actually had an increase in the average resonating level of the residents. And at the same time, there was a decrease in their perceived stress, a decrease in their depression scores, and a decrease in burnout. And on the annual ACGME resident survey that's given every February and March, the percent of residents who rated our program as positive or very positive increased from 80 to 96%. And we measured resident reported satisfaction in 14 different areas of life, and it increased in 10 of the 14 areas. It increased in things like work-life balance and communication skills, time management, and work relationships. These are all things that were addressed in the curriculum of the program. What's even more important to me is the intangible benefits. So I think this program encourages healthy behaviors, and it helps them integrate their work in their life, and it really creates a sense of community amongst the residents that's palpable. In December, we had 28 residents, faculty, and staff finish the Tucson Half Marathon, some who've never done something like that in their lives. We developed training programs, we donated money to the program, and we had fun. And most of us can't get 28 residents to do anything. But I really think it's a sense of community. I can't prove it, but I feel like it's this sense of community that's changed the resident perception or satisfaction with the program. And I saw it in a couple ways this year. I saw it when the resident candidates came to interview. They would come and they would have dinner with our residents, and they would feel this sense of camaraderie, and they're like, I want to come there. They don't even know what it is, but they want some of it. And when we had our 7-year academic program review, I didn't have to coach the residents to talk up the program because I knew they were going to say good things. One of the other intangible benefits, as in the course of this, I'm really honest and open about my experiences, and I think that helps normalize the stress and emotions that they experience and gives us an avenue to talk about it. This is Josh. Josh is one of our outstanding fourth-year residents, and a couple months ago, Josh and I were operating together. We were doing a small umbilical hernia and a really difficult Whipple in a patient who had acute on chronic pancreatitis. And we're doing the umbilical hernia, and he's struggling. And I, in my usual impatient way, I said, Josh, you're making this look hard. So he didn't really say anything. We sort of finished the case, and he came up to me after the case, and he said, Dr. Rile, I have a lot of level 1 energy. And I know that means nothing to you, but to me, that's the language of this model. And as soon as he said that, I understood what he was experiencing. His level 1 energy is his feelings of fear, or insecurity, or self-doubt, and I asked him more about it. He said, I've never done a Whipple, and this patient's really sick. I'm really worried about hurting this patient, and I'm not sure what to do. And these are the thoughts running through his head, so my comment is not very helpful. But I wasn't aware, right? So once I'm able to understand what's going on in his head, it now allows me to change how I approach that situation, and it changed the whole course of how that day could have gone. And I'm really proud to work in a program where, one, he feels he could say that to me, and two, where we have this common language to communicate effectively. Today in this room, I'm talking to 3 generations of surgeons, my outstanding mentors who dedicated their lives to being surgeons first and foremost. Then there are junior faculty, residents, fellows, and medical students in the room who have had a broader definition of success. And then my generation who's sort of caught in between. There are many in this room who have mentored me and many friends, and I wish I had time to thank everybody. I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to have trained at Hopkins. Dr. Yo and Dr. Lilimo, your mentorship have been invaluable. You both taught me to take the very best care of patients. Your attention to detail and your technical skills are inspiring, and I bring these skills every day to the care of my patients. Thank you for taking me under your wing as a third-year medical student and creating the foundation for my research career, my health sciences career. And thank you for not only mentoring me, but sponsoring me and advancing my career at every opportunity. Dr. Neumeier, I can't thank you enough for the opportunities you've given me at the University of Arizona. I came to Arizona because you have a broader definition of success. You share my vision for how things could be, and you've encouraged me and supported me in achieving those goals. We are actually building a different kind of surgical department, and I am proud to work with you at the University of Arizona. And finally, Dr. Townsend, you've been an incredible mentor and friend. Congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award, and having you honor it in the same session makes it even more special to me. I respect your honesty and your transparency. You've supported me through many changes, my transition from resident to junior faculty, and the transition that I'm talking about today. Charlie once told me that you and he were playing golf, and someone was talking about something crazy that I wanted to do, and you told him not to bet against me. Thank you for continually giving me the courage to define my own success and for supporting me in those dreams, even when you might not have understood them. I know I can always call you up and get straightforward, clear, succinct, and good advice, but I still miss you every day since I left UTMB. I want to acknowledge the faculty in my division and department. It's a cohesive, collaborative team who support each other and allow all of us to integrate our complex professional and personal lives successfully. And I want to thank Dr. Fonsam, our residency program director, for stepping outside the box and helping me create a well-being program for our residents. And I want to thank my residents for embracing that program and for leading the way in changing surgical culture. As surgical leaders and future surgical leaders, we must model, develop, and teach these attitudes, behaviors, and strategies which facilitate success, while simultaneously creating an intentional culture that supports these behaviors and provides multiple paths to success in academic surgery. We must take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others, and we must give those around us the courage to define their own success and support them in their journey, as my mentors have done for me. If we don't, we will continue to lose the best and brightest surgeons to burnout, and we won't attract the best and brightest of the next generation. Finally, I want to thank my family and friends who got to see the impact of the culture of strength and invincibility from the other side. Mom, it must be a mom's job to always worry. When I went home about a year ago, and my mom lives in New Jersey, and I went home to give a talk in New York City, and I wanted to take the train. She said, you can't take the train by yourself. I said, listen, Mom, I'm 45 years old, but she actually drove me into Manhattan, which is far more dangerous than taking the train. Thank you for always worrying about me. I know you worry that I work too hard, and I do work hard, but I actually love what I do. And while I look like Daddy, I want you to know that I'm just like you. So sometimes I'll do or say something, and Charlie will say, you're just like your mother. And I want you to know that that's the greatest compliment I can receive. Mom, you're the strongest person I know. My stepfather, Phil, is here with my mom today. Phil, I know you would do anything for me, and I know how much you love me. I know you hate to fly, and I'm really, really grateful that you're here with me today. My sister Shannon is here with her family, Dan, my nephew Zachary, and my niece Mackenzie, and her husband Dan. Shannon is an amazingly talented news reporter, mother, baker, and friend. In some ways, we are polar opposites, except for that we both can't sing. But in some ways, Shannon, we're a lot more similar than you think. And I wished we lived closer. I wish that we both had more time. But I love you, Shannon. And I love you guys, and I thank you, Zachary and Mackenzie and Dan, for taking the time to be here today. My father died of lymphoma shortly after we moved to Texas. As usual, I probably would not have told him much about this event or what it meant, but he would have asked Charlie, and he would have been proud. Mom, I thank both you and him for providing the foundation for everything I do and hope to do with my life. Finally, Charlie, your picture with the most interesting man in the world. You are, without a doubt, the only person who could be married to me. We met and we got engaged when I was in the lab, so he didn't actually give informed consent. But you've weathered many changes in my career and my personal outlook. Thank you for picking up your life twice to move with me. I always tell people that we never argue because an argument by definition requires a second party. And you always diffuse me and you bring out the best in me, and every day you make me laugh. And I know that I never need to be censored around you. We joke about it, but I am a full-time job. And I want to thank you for taking care of me every day and in every way. And even beyond not being able to turn on the television because they don't know how to work the remote, I can't imagine my life without you. And I love you. When I talk about this, people often ask me if I would have been as successful with my new perspective, and I've considered this really carefully. And I suppose it depends on your definition of success. So was I successful 4 years ago? In June of 2013, I was in the elevator at UTMB, and the chief resident in medicine got on at the 6th floor. And I didn't know him since he was a medical student. And I said hello, and I asked him how he was doing. And I still remember his response. He looked at me and he said, "Oh, I'm great." He said, "I can see the finish line." And I didn't have the heart to tell him. There is no finish line. And, as John Lennon said, life is what's happening while we're busy making other plans. The journey is the destination. So the journey has to feel the way you think the finish line should feel. I know I'm successful when I'm enjoying the journey and when I'm creating an environment that allows my faculty, staff, residents, family, and friends to do the same. And when I'm not, I need to step back, reevaluate, and realign my priorities with my values. Don't be so focused on the finish line that you forget to enjoy the journey. Thank you.